Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Broken Beautiful Me, stories of hope, gratitude, and resilience. And I am truly honored today to have as my guest Asha Mevlana. Asha is a two-time breast cancer survivor, a professional violinist with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and author of To Hell with No, Adventures in Finally Saying Yes. Diagnosed at 24, she made a fear list and started checking things off: skydiving, silent meditation retreats, becoming a touring musician, and finally a single mom. When cancer 25 years later, while raising her small son, she had to redefine resilience. She lives in Arkansas with her 3-year-old son, Kef. Welcome, Asha. I'm so honored to have you here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
So, just to kind of get us started, tell us, in your intro, it's so rich with so many details of your life. Can you just kind of give us a little bit about your background and what brought you here today?
Yeah, I guess, I grew up in Boston, kind of a normal life. I was kind of going the corporate route. That was my role model. I didn't know anything else. That's where my parents were pushing me for. You go to college, you get a corporate job, all that stuff. So I was doing all of that. And then it was, I think the defining moment that kind of changed the entire course of my life was it's about a year or so after college. I was working in PR in New York City, and I got a breast cancer diagnosis, which at that time, it was 1999. The doctors had never heard of someone that young having breast cancer. I'd been misdiagnosed for 2 years because they're like, oh, you're too young for breast cancer. And of course, I believed them, and that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to hear. So that was kind of the defining moment. And then that just changed the course of everything from that point on. And yeah, there's a lot in between that, but that's kind of how it all started.
So, you've lived several different lifetimes in one, and like as a PR person, a musician, a cancer survivor. And so when you look back over all of those different arcs, what feels like the true beginning of your story?
I think definitely that moment when they literally in the doctor's office and they said you have breast cancer, and it was this shocking moment. I still remember it so clearly. I just sunk back in the chair and I was like, this can't be my life. I've always been healthy. How is this happening? And it was never about why me. Like it was more just like, okay, what do I do with this information? How do I go and live a life that I actually want to be living? Because up until that point, I think I'd always lived what other people thought I should live and what I thought I should live. And I'd
Mm.
always played violin since I was 6 years old, and I loved it. But I also had always heard the phrase like, "Oh, it's too hard to be a musician. You can't make a living at that." So of course I believed that. And as soon as I was diagnosed, I realized because they had no idea, they had no statistics on someone age 24 with a 5-year prognosis, 10-year, they didn't know. And so at that point, I was like, well, I might be dying. And so what do I want to do? If I have a year left to live, how do I want to live this life? And I realized I had just lived scared of everything. I didn't become a musician because I was too scared. I didn't travel because I was too scared. All the different things that came up. And I think I just decided to make this fear list. Like you mentioned, I made a fear list. What are all the things I would like to do before I die? I'd never fallen in love. I was too scared, to be turned down or whatever it was, or be heartbroken. I started traveling. I decided as soon as I finished I did chemotherapy, radiation. I had a lumpectomy the first time. And as soon as I finished all my treatments, I said, okay, I'm going to quit my job, public relations. I was living in New York City, and I'm going to move to LA because like that's where rock musicians live. I'd always done classical, but I wanted to be a rock musician. And I remember my uncle saying, oh, there's no such thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm not listening to those voices anymore. There is such thing. And I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I made this fear list and I just started kind of checking them off like one by one. I moved to LA. I knew some distant cousins. They said I could stay with them until I, found my own place. Stayed with them. And in the meantime, I I had one friend, a female, who traveled by herself all the time, and I just always admired her. I was like, well, that can't be me. And I was like, well, maybe it could be me. So I started doing these little trips, by myself, like little by little. At first they were short trips, then they started becoming more international and things like that. But I yeah, so I just started living a different life than I had before. And I still live that life. I'm still scared of a lot of things. People see me and the things I've done, and they're like, "You're so fearless," and that's actually not true at all. I'm still scared of everything, but I think the difference is that now I feel that fear, and I'm like, "Oh, interesting." Like I become more curious about it, and I say, "Okay, here's that fear in my stomach. There's that feeling again, and now let's go for it," because that means I'm going to learn something from this, and I'm going to grow from it.
And you prove to yourself by pushing through those previous fears that, a lot of times that we build things up in our mind that about our ability or inability to do something. And it's all just really an illusion that we create. That's beautiful. And I will tell our listeners, you really should go to YouTube and watch some of the videos from your travels. They're wonderful. And the word that I want to say when I have, because we had this brief conversation before I pressed record about how I like to kind of look at videos of people and get to know them a little bit before I interview, and I do it the morning of the interview. And the one word that I was left with after I finished and I was making my notes for the interview was joy. Every video, I just felt this, not over the top, no, just like this joy that you exude joy. And it was to know that, you decided to do that after you had gone through such an experience with breast cancer treatment is just simply amazing and beautiful.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely taken the hard way in things. I've never taken the easy path with kind of everything I've done. And there's definitely, I can't say that it's all been joyful because it hasn't. It's been tough a lot of the ways, but I've definitely lived an intentional life in the way that I want to live. I see my friends who, I graduated college with, and they're in a very specific job. They all kind of had a very specific path, and I've definitely not had a path. And sometimes that can be scary and frustrating. Especially as a musician, you're like, oh, when is my next gig going to come along? And when's this going to happen? And I've sort of learned how to live with the unknown and become more excited about living in the unknown. It makes things a little more, exciting
Yeah,
to have that. Yeah.
exactly. You said that when words were not enough, that music became your voice. What does your violin allow you to express that you can't say out loud?
I think I used to be, before the first breast cancer diagnosis, I think I was, not that I was closed off, but I had trouble communicating, I think.
Mhm.
And I think with the violin, like when I'm on stage and, we're playing to these arenas full of people, it's like, I mean, I personally could never be a singer. I don't think I would enjoy that because like even public speaking, I don't really enjoy talking to huge groups of people. But with my violin, it's almost like this is like my conduit. This can be the thing that shows, and I can almost hide here, but it's like my violin is expressing myself and my emotions. I think it's almost like this is a tool for me.
Yeah. What does it feel like to play for arenas of that size? I mean, I know the crowds that go and faithfully to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. What is that moment like when you're standing there with all those people? That must be incredible.
It's like I feel like I'm so incredibly lucky to have landed this gig. I've been playing with them for 15 years. First of all, I love all the people. They're literally my family. We spend all of our holidays together because it's all of November and December and you don't fly home.
Yeah.
So, first of all, it's that, but then being able to play with all these unbelievable musicians, and
Yes.
then looking out and you see these people who come year after year. Some of them are kids and you see them growing up and you meet them afterwards, and it feels like a big family. And then seeing them smile, you're like, wow, I am bringing joy to people. This is like, it's just, is such an incredible feeling. And it's funny because I do tend to think of myself more as an introvert. I remember like at the beginning of every season, I'm like, oh my God, can I do this again? Can I actually be on stage and perform for all these people? But once you get out there, it's just like you don't think about that. It's like you see people smiling and I'm able to connect with them one on one, even though it's such a big audience. I can look them in the eye and you see, obviously not the people in the back, but certain people. And then when you're going through the audience, you can look at them and you're like exchanging this energy. And it's funny, I've actually learned to be a better audience member through this because like I remember my mom used to sit in the audience and she just kind of has like a serious face and she'd be watching. And I was like, and I asked her after, are you enjoying the show? Because you don't look like it. She goes, oh my God, I love this show. I was like, well, I want to see it on your face, And so like, and it's funny because like you don't think of yourself as being part of the show when you're the audience, but you definitely
Yeah,
are. You feed off the audience so much.
absolutely. I will remember that the next time I'm sitting in a chair in an audience, because that's true. It is an exchange of energy. That's so true. Oh my goodness. Tell me about the difference between being brave and being seen. And when in your life did those two finally meet?
I don't think I was always brave. I think when I started pushing myself little by little, it was a process. It definitely, and I still work on it every day. Being seen is a tricky one because I think there's so many different facets or parts of me. I think I feel seen in some ways by certain people. I think when I'm performing, they see a part of me, but maybe not
Mm,
all of me. Um, so I think seen is a tricky one for me because I don't think there's many people in my life who see the full me.
right.
And I think I even have trouble sometimes. I'm like, who am I exactly? Like, this is my persona here, and this is definitely me. But then here's me being a mom. That's a totally different thing. Um,
Yeah.
like even when I drop off my son at school, one of the teachers had come to see my performance this year. And I mean, when I'm performing, my hair's done. I have the fake eyelashes. I have the makeup. I have the costume. And then I drop my son off at school and I mean, my hair is pulled up. I have no makeup. I mean, I have bags under my eyes, sweatpants. And that's how she was used to seeing me. And she came to the show. She goes, I didn't even recognize you. You're a different person. And so it's like, I feel like I have these different parts of me and not everyone kind of sees all different parts, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. And not everybody is supposed to see all parts. I
Yeah.
mean, that's reserved for the very few. And I think
Yeah.
that that's important that you are able to keep, parts of yourself for you and the people in your circle.
I was just going to tell a story about like how I got the job working at the Trans-Siberian Orchestra because I mean I'm definitely like not the best violinist, not the best performer. I mean I don't there's so many other people who are way more talented, all the other things. And I remember I wanted this job so badly, and this is one of the things on kind of working through fear. I remember I got there and I was so scared. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this job. I want it so badly though. And I knew other people who were auditioning that were way better. And what I did know is that they wanted someone confident. And I was like, I'm not a really confident person. Like I mean, sometimes in some ways I'm confident, but at that point, this was 15 years ago, I was like, I don't think I'm confident enough. But then I was like, how do I get this? And I literally, before my audition, the morning of, this one of the people who were the talent scouts, she said, what they're really looking for is someone who's super confident. And so I was like, okay, how do I do this? And so I practiced before I went into this audition. I said, what would a confident person look like? How would they walk? How would they put their violin case down? All this stuff. And I remember that's all I practiced for an hour before this audition. And I walked in and there's 5 people who were, going to hire me or not hire me. And they said, oh, it was a big room. And they said, oh, you can set up over in that little corner over there. And there's like this little out thing of the room. And I said, oh, that's not enough room for me. I need this entire room to play. And I saw their eyes kind of pop open. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, who are you? You would normally say this. And so they're like, okay. So I set my violin down. I mean, I walked in like I was a diva, set my violin down, started playing my audition piece. I was running around the room like a crazy person. I mean, I acted like I was the best violinist on earth. And they hired me on the spot. And I remember thinking, after I walked out, I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? That is not me. But it's interesting because there was a part of me who I was me,
Yeah.
in one way. So in a way, you're talking about being seen, but it's like there are different parts of you that sometimes you can kind of channel. And I was able to channel that person to get this audition.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's such a great story.
Yeah, at first I felt like I was being fake, but I was like, no, but it has to be in there on some level, or I wouldn't be able to channel it.
Right. That's absolutely right. Going back to being seen, and in particular, I'm thinking about some people who are listening to this podcast right now who are either going through cancer treatments now or in remission or going for those follow-up appointments, every 6 months and 12 months and then waiting to hear. A lot of times with cancer diagnosis, and there's many members of my family who have had cancer, passed from cancer. Talk about being seen when you, and the nuance that you sometimes encounter of being seen as the diagnosis and seen as the person.
Yeah, that was really tricky for me, because I'd always I'd always seen myself as a healthy person. That's who I was. So when this happened, it was like all of a sudden I was the sick person. And everyone's like, "How are you feeling? How are you feeling?" And I was like, "Oh God, this is not who I want to be. I don't want to be a sick person. I don't want people to look at me as a sick person." And then going into the doctor's office all the time, like checking my blood and doing this and my hair falling out. I was like, "Oh my God." And then feeling sick. It was a really tricky time. And I remember, actually, just a side note is, I forgot what it was like to feel healthy. I remember it wasn't until like a year or two after I finished all my treatments and I woke up one morning, I was like, "Oh my God, I actually feel healthy." I totally forgot what that felt like. But going back to that, so I think it was tricky because, and then everyone I surrounded myself it was doctors, it was other breast cancer patients. It was all I talked about for a year and a half was cancer and survival rates and all the other stuff that was like so scary. That's all I read about. And
Mm-hmm.
when I first got out of the treatments, right before I moved to LA, I actually worked with a breast cancer nonprofit, and it was kind of helping other young women through breast cancer diagnoses and things like that. And I really enjoyed that because I felt like I could help other people. But then there was a point where all of a sudden I started becoming immune to that. I was like, I can't hear this anymore. This is not helping me. And what I also realized is other people women I knew who kind of were in the nonprofit, and they'd become almost like this is what they were going to do for the rest of their life, is working at breast cancer nonprofit. And what I realized is like, this is not what I want my identity to be. I don't want to be the breast cancer patient. And so at
Right.
that moment, I realized this is not where I should be working anymore. Like, I need to actually quit this job and move on, because I wanted my identity to be something different. Breast cancer was something I learned from. It was an experience, and I was actually grateful to have had. I mean, I would never wish it on anyone, but I was grateful to have had that experience because it changed my life. It allowed me time to reprioritize like what was important to me, which I wouldn't have had an opportunity otherwise.
Yep.
Or maybe it would have come way later in my life when it was like way later. But I had an opportunity when I was young to basically reprioritize what was important. I couldn't have changed it. I needed to go through all of that. I needed to be that patient. I needed to read all that stuff. But at some point when you're out of it, it's like, okay, I need to move on now. This is not my life.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about different points over the years with the bereaved community and how I have had that same feeling that is this the best is this the best way that I take care of myself? Is this, and you adjust, you make those changes. But you do have to watch for that because it's okay for you to start a new chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and giving people permission to do that. I think sometimes people need to hear that from their loved ones, that they're going to begin this new chapter, and that's okay. They can kind of leave that and take the lessons with them forward.
Right. And also, it's important to be gentle with yourself and let yourself go through all of that too, and not rush that phase, I think, too.
Mhm. And so, what would you say to a listener who right now is feeling that the only thing that people see is the diagnosis? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky because I think, especially if the person's close to them. I know that my parents had a way harder time dealing with this than I did.
Yeah.
And my friends had a way harder time than I did. And so that's what they're focused on too, because they care so much about you and they want you to be healthy and they want you to survive and all this other stuff. So I think it's tricky because they're also going through their own process of grieving or whatever it is.
Right.
But I think what I had to do for myself is I had to kind of set boundaries and I had to protect myself. And so, like, for example, my dad had a really hard time with this. And he kept saying, all I can see is like my baby girl dying. And I was like, wow, this is not helpful for me at this moment. And I love my dad. And I actually told him, I was like, Dad, if you're going to say comments like this, if you're going to cry around me, I actually can't talk to you until this is over. And so I had to set boundaries and I didn't talk to him for a year until it was
Yeah.
over and I felt better. And that was the healthiest thing for me to do for myself. And I wasn't being mean. I explained it to him, but he had to go through his own thing. And I couldn't take that on. I had to take care of myself. It was the first time I think in my life that I finally decided I have to take care of myself first. I'm number one. I always felt like that was too selfish. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it was like, I actually need to be selfish to survive this.
Hmm. And so it is okay and almost necessary to set the boundaries that will keep you on that path towards healing.
Hmm.
That is okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's necessary.
Very much so. Yeah. Creativity often comes from the cracks. How has your pain shaped your art? Not just the sound, but the way that you actually show up in this world.
Well, I think just the way that I've set up my life, I
Hmm.
see that as sort of a creative process because I don't take sort of the route that everyone else takes. I don't have a normal schedule. I mean, if I want to travel, for example, my friends are all working all year long, and I have a really intense, time when I'm traveling, touring. And I used to work at TripAdvisor, and they would send me on these trips, and I had gone to film school also, and so I would go on these trips and film for them, and they would send me all over. And then in the meantime, I would have all this downtime. So in the beginning, it was kind of tough because I would have these really high highs. I'd go and be performing, and all of a sudden I get home and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? It's like so boring to be home. So I had to kind of to learn that and to understand that that's okay to have like the downtime and that's actually important. Um, but now I am able to realize, oh, I have this huge chunk of time. I can go. So for example, I went to Cali, Colombia to learn salsa dancing for a month by myself. Or I do different random things to for myself. So I think I see my life as sort of uh, a creative. That's my creativity of how I'm living my life, kind of day to day, in that way. Of course, I have different creative outlets. I love filming. I love my music, things like that. But I think overall, like how I see the creativity coming out is the way I'm living my life, if that makes sense.
I love it. That makes complete sense. And, we are, I said earlier, still under construction. So, I mean, we're all really unfinished art projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
just seeing what we're going to add next.
Absolutely. I mean, if we were like finished, there's just no point, right? Like the whole point is like
Right.
learning and growing. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about, I want to hear more about your book and how that changed you to put that out to write a book about overcoming your fear and saying yes. Just tell us a little bit about the book and what we will see in it.
Yeah. So I turned 50 this year, and right, I also got a second breast cancer diagnosis right when I turned 50. So I was like, whoa, this is I. It was shocking because I feel like I've changed my life, and I feel like, how did I bring this into my life again? That's like what went through my head. Like I really had changed everything to figure out how to live my life in a way where my body could be healthy. So when I
Mm-hmm.
got this second breast cancer diagnosis this year, it was really shocking, devastating, because now I have a 3-year old,
Yes.
and sort of like, how am I going to do this again? And because it was a second one, they'd already done radiation. They said, we can't do radiation again. And it's a second time, even though it's 25 years later.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to do double mastectomy. However, they couldn't do implants because one of the sides was radiated. So basically, what they had to do is a double mastectomy. I could have gone flat. I didn't want to. I mean, everyone makes their own choices. So what they had to do is a flap reconstruction. So they basically took the skin around, or the fat from my butt, and basically made new breasts for me.
Yeah.
And it was uh, oh, it was a long, awful process. Normally, they can take fat from your stomach. I had lost all this weight because I wasn't feeling good for like a year,
Yeah.
and that's an easier one. But basically, it was they didn't have anyone to do that kind of surgery in Arkansas, so I had to go to New Orleans for 2 weeks for the first time, and it was yeah, it was just a really it took a long time to recover from that because it was because of where they cut it.
Yeah.
Um, and then I had to go back 3 months later once I'd kind of healed, and then they kind of finished everything up. So um, I just like lost my train of thought of like why I started telling you that. Oh, the book. Oh, okay. So I had that, and I'd always written about my experiences ever since I was the first time around when I was 24. I just kind of journaled and had all these stories out there, but never really did anything with them. And was like, who would ever want to read these? Like, these are more for me, or maybe my kid one day to read about me. And I really didn't think anyone would care. So when I turned 50 and I had the second breast cancer diagnosis, I was like, it almost feels like this bookend. And I said, this is a new chapter in my life. And, and so I pulled all these stories I had written over the years and kind of all the lessons I'd learned from different things. And I just created a book. And really for me, writing this book it was kind of cathartic because I wanted to move on. I wanted to move on from all these old stories that were still stuck in my body.
Yeah.
And to put this out was like, okay, I'm ending that chapter and I'm starting this new one. I have this new body now. I have this, new thing that's happening. And I don't want to hold on to these stories anymore because it felt like an old me. And so I got it together like pretty quickly, like within a couple months, because they'd already been written. It was just more about putting them together and figuring out how to kind of because I didn't put them in an order. I kind of put them, jumbled up over the years. So that was how the book came to be. And then the way that I structured it was kind of like the story of what I did and kind of what I learned from it.
Mhm.
And it was kind of the hell no chapter, and then the yes, like yes to saying, something or whatever it is. And the way that I sort of have lived my life, or ways that I wish someone had told me how to get through this. So that was kind of how I structured it. It was like hell no, like chapter one is hell no part, the story, and then the hell yes is kind of like advice, or an idea for someone to get through something.
That's beautiful. I mean, sharing your wisdom, but and giving that backstory so that they understand how you gained it. I love that, and I really appreciate you talking about your surgery and the reconstruction, because that is quite an extensive process, and there's a lot of women who are out there who are going through the same thing, and it's often a piece of a breast cancer diagnosis that is not discussed enough, because it is part of women regaining their sense of self, and there's a lot about body image. So I'm so thankful that you talked about that today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it was definitely when this happened again. I mean, I've never been attached to my breasts. I'm very small, but there was something about it. I had to kind of do a grieving process. Like, wow, this is a chunk of my body that's been with me forever, and I'm saying bye to that. So even though I wasn't like attached to it, I actually, before the surgery, I kind of did a grieving thing. I said, thank you so much for everything you've been around for my whole life. Thank you. And, and bye, basically.
Yeah. And I've talked to so many people over the years about grief, and that is grief. Grief doesn't mean the loss of a loved one. Grief comes in many different forms. And I love that you, almost in a ceremonial type of way, expressed gratitude to those two puppies before, and said thank you for everything. And now we're moving forward with the healing.
I read this book a while ago. You probably have heard of it. It's Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying.
Yes.
Have you ever read that book?
Yeah.
And that really changed my life and the way that I live. Like, so for example, I built this whole tiny house in Arkansas, which is how I ended up in Arkansas. That's a whole other story. But it was really about living with just the things that bring you joy. And so I think, what I loved about her book is the way that she'll take a piece of clothing or a book or whatever it is. And she said, thank you so much for everything you've done for me. And now I'm going to let you go and you're going to go live another life. And it was not about just like, okay, bye, trashing things that at one point served you. It's really about like giving that gratitude and being able to move on,
And realizing that gratitude doesn't have to be a tangible piece of anything. It can be something that you can just hold in your heart, maybe in a photo on your phone.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
that you don't have to be surrounded by the stuff part of gratitude. We sometimes get confused about having, we don't have to be hoarders to be thankful.
Right. Yeah.
And there is, and that book, in just thinking about it, there is such a beauty in making your life simple.
Oh yeah.
And realizing that, because there's a lot, the world is chaotic, no doubt. So why are we adding that to our personal lives? We have the ability to simplify, and to make, as you did with a small home, a place where it only contains the joy. That's such a beautiful, beautiful way you put that. There's a moment in every healing journey, and I remember my own, where you realize I am not the same person anymore. Not necessarily a negative thing. I am not the same person anymore. Talk to our listeners about that moment.
Well, I think when I landed in Los Angeles with my violin and not knowing anyone and thinking, what am I doing? Like, it was just the biggest mistake ever. I was sitting on the plane. I was like, I think I might have just made the biggest mistake ever. Like, what am I doing? This is terrifying. But I think it wasn't that I knew I was changed at that point, but I think I was like, wow, this is a brand new life that I'm setting up for myself.
Yeah.
And I could go back, but that's not where I want to be anymore. So I don't know that it was like I was actually changed at that moment, but I realized this is the moment in my life where everything is changing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it has to change because the way that I was living wasn't working for me.
Right. And you realize, I think that struggle is part of our journey as human beings. And it is what presents the wisdom that we need to have. That's kind of how I've lived my life, is to take the lessons from those things. Your performances on stage are electric. I'm kind of changing direction again. And we talked about the energy from the audience. What does it feel like inside your body as a survivor on stage when that music, when you're in flow and that music is flowing through you?
I think that's exactly what you said, is in flow. I'm so present. I'm not thinking about something else. I'm literally just there in the moment. And it's something that being present has always been something that's been more difficult for me. I think it's difficult for a lot of people. I've done a lot of, I remember I signed up for this 10-day silent meditation when I was, I think 34, and I was terrified. I'd never meditated in my life, but this relationship had just ended and I thought I was going to marry this guy and it didn't work out. And so I was like, oh my God, I need help. What do I do? And I remember people saying 10-day silent meditation like changed their life. So I signed up for this thing, and it was traumatizing. This 10-day was absolutely traumatizing because I'd never meditated. I had to sit with myself for 10 days and just hear all the voices in my head over and over and over. I was like, oh wow, I think I'm crazy. And I like felt myself getting angry. You can talk to the teacher for like 5 minutes a day. And I went and I said, I don't think this is healthy for me. All I'm feeling is anger coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, then it's working. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is not working. And I was even more angry. And she said, the fact that you're angry, this is working. And she was right, because by the end, it was like, that was actually another point where I really did change. I felt like everything in my body got reset on a totally different level. And then my dad actually did that with that same meditation with me. And we talked about it on the way home. He had never meditated either. We talked about on the way home how we were never going to do this again. Like, it was interesting, but that was it. And then 6 months later, we were both back doing it again. I've now done 8 of them.
Oh my God.
But the idea of being present and learning how to be present, like when I'm on stage, it's like that presence that I like search for and try. It just comes so naturally when I'm on stage with my friends and these other musicians and we're playing this music. It just comes so naturally. You're just in the moment.
That's a beautiful place to be too, which is, in the present moment is all we really have. What is one question you thought I was going to ask you and I didn't? And how would you have answered it?
Maybe, the difference between the first breast cancer diagnosis and the second breast cancer diagnosis, because I think I'm such a different person 25 years later.
Right.
And how has that changed, or how is your thought process different now, especially having like a 3-year-old? So I think maybe I thought you were going to do something about that, but if I were to answer that, I guess the first time I was so young,
mm-hmm.
and it was all about checking off that list. Check, 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 check. Type A, getting things done, getting the fears off the list so I can, accomplish that. And this time around was just not at all that way. I'm a mom now. It's like everything, I just want my life more calm. I'm not all about accomplishing things. I really do try to be more present in my life. It's like, especially with a child that's so young,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be. It's just constant, like you're brought into the present moment all the time with that. And so this time it's not about, proving anything to myself. It's just more about being and being with my son in the time that I have with him.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a very different kind of attitude and way of approaching it.
Yeah.
This time.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because you're right. I mean, developmentally, you were in 2 different stages of your life. So it's 2 very different experiences for you. Your son, Kev, so he's 3. He's full of energy, I'm sure. How does he like your music?
He loves it. Yeah. I mean, it's a long show. It's like 2.5 hours, and he will sit through it. I think the problem is that I go away and I'm not allowed to go home when I'm on tour.
Yeah.
So he doesn't see me. So, and he really misses me. He stays with my dad and my brother. But this time when I came home, he said, Mama, you're not going on tour anymore. I was like, oh no. So I really try when I'm home, like now that I'm home, I try to spend all the time I can with him. and really have those experiences and try to explain to him that I do have a different kind of life than other people. But the lucky thing is that when I'm home, I really get to spend so much time with him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you play for him at home?
Sometimes at night I'll play for him. Yeah, not as much. I should play for him more. He loves music. He loves like dancing to it. And he says he wants to be a drummer and like, but it's interesting because he's growing up in such a different way than I did, where his normal is that people can be musicians. That's a way of life, compared to me where I was like, oh, you can't be a musician. There's no way that's even possible, you know?
I mean, it is very interesting how that's changed so much over, I mean, I guess not a really long period of time where, kids are like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I can go on YouTube and create my own channel. And I mean,
kids can do everything now.
They can. I can't even tell you the times I call my son and ask for IT support.
Right. Exactly.
He's very patient with his mama.
Yeah. Well, things are changing so quickly too. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up.
Right.
If you could place one message in the hands of every young girl who feels they have dreams like yours, they have fears. We all have those balance of emotions. But they feel like maybe they're different or they're too much or I can't do that. What would you say to those young girls? What message would you give them?
Well, I think first of all, it's okay to be scared about anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really natural emotion and thing to feel. I think everyone has those. What I think is important is not to get stuck on that. And it's important to get curious, to acknowledge it and say, oh, cool. Okay, you're back again. Interesting. You're trying to protect me. And let's keep going, So I think it's important to not let fear stop you. It's just a signal in your brain to say, okay, this is different. I'm not used to this. But I think that's what builds resilience when you keep trying things. And I think I used to be so scared of failure. That was like my biggest thing. I don't want to do anything that I'm not going to be successful at. And now I'm like, cool, if I fail at this, I'm going to learn something. And I think for me, it's about that growth mindset. Like, what can I actually get out of this? Like, I'm probably not going to be the best at this. Like, for example, I did a stand-up improv course because I was terrified of it. It's a long story. And I was like, I have to do this, even though I really don't want to. And I did it. And it was a terrible experience. I was the absolute worst in the class. It was a 2-week program, I think. And I'd go every day and I would have stomach aches every day. And we had to do a performance at the end of the 2 weeks. And everyone else was an actual actor or comedian. I was not funny. I was not good. I mean, I really was terrible at this class and I would never do it again. But it's like, wow, I got through that. Like, I can get through other stuff too. And I think that's the important thing, is that it's okay to fail. It's actually great. It's a great experience for your body to have that and be like, I got through it. I'm still alive. And let's try the next thing.
Yeah. I think that's so important for us to redefine failure because it's just part of the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I had a great fear of failure through school, and I just wanted to do well. And it prevented me from taking opportunities. I mean, I feel inspired listening to you. I'm not going to do an improv class because I would kind of have the experience that you had, but I'm so inspired that you just said, yeah, okay, this is different. And I love that when you find yourself fearful, that you say, well, that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to put that there, but I'm going to keep going. And I think that that's the lesson that we all need to take from you today. That's interesting, but we're going to keep going. We're fearful.
Yeah, just be curious.
Be curious. Yeah. There's not enough curiosity in this world. Everybody thinks they have it all figured out.
I definitely don't.
No, I remember I wrote something and I said, in my 20s, I was quite confident that I had everything figured out. In my 30s, I said, I don't know it all, but I know most of it. In my 40s, I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed about what I said in my 20s and 30s. And in my 50s,
Right.
I said, I have nothing figured out, but that's okay. I think this is the first time I've made peace with like being a hot mess. I'm like, yeah, I don't have it figured out. It's okay. I'm still
Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it makes life more fun too.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let's just see what happens.
Let's see what happens. I pulled a couple of quotes and I love them and the music reference. So my violin became the place where my truth could finally breathe. And then you're never off track when you're following your own rhythm. And pain didn't break me, it tuned me. That's so powerful that you were able to take your experience and to take such wisdom from it, to share your wisdom in the book, and to continue to inspire young women as you step on that stage and just wow people. I can tell you right now, I know that my listeners are going to be talking about that story of your audition. I know they are. Because I'm already picturing it in my mind. I think you probably should write a kid's book about it. Honestly, that's the greatest story. A story of how you channeled your inner higher self to say, this is who I am. This is who I am, and I'm going to show you. I just think that's beautiful.
And I think the other thing I would actually tell if I were talking to young women is like, is take that step before you're ready. Because I think that's what I've learned to do. I never feel ready with anything I do, but I take that step forward anyway. And then I become it. I learned how to become it through that process.
Yeah. And you're never going to have your project 100% finished.
Never.
If you're at 85, get going. You'll figure out the other 15%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you tell our listeners how they can find you, and how they can find your book, and where they might see you play? Any other information you want to share?
Sure. So my website is just my name. It's ashamevlana.com. So ASHAMEVLANA.com. I'm on Instagram, although I don't really use it that much unless I'm on tour. But yeah, my website has most of my things on there. And then on YouTube, you can just search my name, and I'm on that.
Okay.
And then my book is just on Amazon, To Hell with No, and then my name.
Okay. You've inspired me so much today. I feel very thankful for having this time with you. Thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom and your humor. I mean, my heart is full. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show.
Thank you for having me. And it's so wonderful to talk to you. And I've read all about you, and you are a huge inspiration and just so powerful and strong and amazing. So, and resilient. Oh my gosh. So thank you. I really appreciate everything.
Much. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.